Hello, everyone. My name is John Mooney. I'm founding editor of NJ Spotlight, and welcome to our latest roundtable, this one focusing on New Jersey's climate future. This is going to be the first of four roundtables. We're going to be focusing in on the impact of climate change and the ever-changing weather patterns that we're seeing as we speak, especially in California, but obviously also how it impacts New Jersey. We're starting, it seems fitting that we're starting with stormwater flooding, something that New Jersey knows all too well. We're really excited about the panel discussion, bringing a lot of different perspectives about not just the problem, but some of the remedies and some of the policies that very well may impact it. We have a few logistics on this. The agenda is that we will have a panel discussion led by our able moderator, Brianna Venozzi, and opening some possibilities for folks to submit questions in the chat. Many of you submitted questions when you registered. We thank you very much, and that's very much going to help inform the discussion as well. We also encourage folks to be, having conversations among themselves in the chat. That it's the new networking with roundtables, and we found it really fruitful, and folks have found it really valuable as well. That chat will be moderated, and our moderator, Tim Nostrin, will be adding links and other resources as well as we go along. Obviously any event has social media, and so we ask that you share certainly any of this. Be sure to include our handle, NJ Spotlight News. And we're also want to stress that this is being taped. And all the registrants, you'll be getting an email with a copy of that tape. Please share. We found that our audience grows considerably after the event in the folks sharing it. So look for those emails, and that I think the chat is also going to be will be taped, so that those resources will be there. I'd like to introduce our panelists, and we have with us today Amanda Deveka Raniere, the executive director of New Jersey Organizing Project. New Jersey Resource Project. Welcome, Amanda, and thank you for joining us. Brooke Maslow, Associate Professor in Department of Ecology, Evolution, and Natural Resources at Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey. Thank you for joining us, Brooke. Good to see you here. Mark McDonough, the President of New Jersey American Water and Senior Vice President of American Water. Thank you for joining us, Mark. And Mayor Richard Onderko of the Borough of Manville, a community that has certainly seen up close the impact of stormwater flooding. Thank you, Your Honor, for joining us today. And last but not least on our panel is our very own John Hurdle, our water and environment writer for NJ Spotlight News, has written quite a bit on stormwater flooding, really knows this topic and the policies around it as much as anyone. And we're thrilled to have you. Thank you, John, for joining us. And of course, our moderator, Brianna Venozzi, the anchor of NJ Spotlight News. She'll be leading this great discussion. Thank you, Brianna, for joining us as well. I'm really looking forward to this. Before we get going, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors. Certainly, this event does not happen without the support, coming from sponsors in events like this one. We provide it to our audience free of charge, but obviously it takes a lot to put this together, and the work involved. That doesn't come cheap, and we couldn't do it without sponsors. So very much want to thank them. I want to pass along to Steve Shallett, our Business Development Director, to say a few words.
Hi, I'm Steve Shallett, Business Development Director for NJ Spotlight News. It's my privilege to be the producer of today's event. Thank you very much for joining us. As John mentioned, it wouldn't be possible to bring these events to the public free of charge without the generous support of our sponsor, whom we would like to acknowledge with our thanks this afternoon. New Jersey American Water. New Jersey American Water is the largest water and wastewater service provider in the state, providing clean, safe, and reliable water and wastewater service to approximately 2.8 million people in over 190 communities in 18 counties. New Jersey American Water is a leader in water treatment and technology with over 800 skilled professionals, including experts in their 7 surface water treatment plants and 5 water quality labs. The company invests about $500 million annually to replace aging infrastructure, meet water quality and environmental regulations, and provide resiliency and efficiency of operations. So thanks again to our sponsor, New Jersey American Water. We'd like to begin our program now with NJ Spotlight News anchor Brianna Venozzi moderating. Our appreciation again for joining us today. And with that, please welcome Brianna Venozzi and our esteemed panelists.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, John. Great to have you all here. So happy to see so many of you who signed up and are participating virtually with us. You know, on one level, flooding is a pretty simple concept to understand, but the severity and the dangers, that can depend on a lot of different factors, which we're going to get into tonight, this afternoon. And of course, that there's no one size fits all solution. Dr. Brooke Maslow, I am really thrilled to be able to talk to you about this because you and your team at Rutgers quite literally wrote the book on some of the possible solutions. But I want to take a step back and start with where floods are happening. And are we as property owners, renters, residents in New Jersey underestimating how vulnerable we are to flooding?
Well, Brianna, thanks for having me. So I don't know if I would say we're underestimating in general. I think that there's been a lot of more recent studies looking at the impacts of climate change, looking at the increase in intensity and frequency of flooding. And most recently with our inland flood protection rules, the state of New Jersey has been adopting and incorporating this more recent data into their predictions and into their planning. So I think that we're taking a proactive approach to really address the issue at hand, which is that flooding is a pronounced problem throughout New Jersey, and that it will continue, again, to increase in frequency and intensity.
Dr. Onderko, Mayor Onderko, sorry, and I hope that you can all hear me. I'm getting some feedback that my volume might be a little low, so I'll try to project a little more while we work those technical kinks out. Mayor Onderko, Manville, obviously we think about the Lost Valley and we think about your borough so much when we look to areas and folks who have been most impacted by flooding. From your perspective, is development and overdevelopment affecting the severity of the flooding? And for your area specifically, where this has been a repeat occurrence over decades?
Absolutely. I lived here my whole life, and what has gone on in the last 10 years just in Somerset County is pretty phenomenal in terms of growth. We have warehousing and apartment complexes going up everywhere. And it seems, unfortunately, that most of that runoff from upstream communities comes through my town. And no one seems to be really addressing the problem. They're hiding behind climate change when it's not climate change. It's overdevelopment with poor stormwater management rules. The rules simply are not good enough, even after Governor Murphy signed the latest rules in 2023. So we have a big problem here, and I'm not so sure how you solve it, because all the towns around us, they have home rule. They could build whatever they want. And with that, the stormwater rules, the regulations don't hold the water back enough. So over time, what's happened to New Jersey, we're going to pave over every watershed. It has nothing to do with climate change. In the last 2 months, we almost had major flood events here. We had 2.5 inches of rain and 3.9 inches of rain. And Route 206 in Somerville went under 2 feet of water. That has never happened before. So we really need a spotlight here on overdevelopment and put the climate change issues on the back burners so that we can survive as a community. Because right now, the only solution the Blue Acres folks have is to knock down every home. In addition, there's no attention to our waterways. They will not dredge any waterway. They won't dredge the Millstone. They won't dredge the Raritan. We have a Royce Brook coming out of Hillsborough that should be dredged, and I'm not so sure the DEP will be willing to address that issue. So I did have two charts I wanted to show if they can be brought up. There was one from 1972. The red area is the amount of impervious coverage that was there back in 1972. I was like 11 years old. And then there's one from 2010. If the 2010 one can come up, and you could see a lot more of the red. And that's only till 2010. So what's happened in the last decade to say 2020? That's part of the problem. That's the big part of the problem. And I don't really see any solution that's going to be a cheap solution, because I've always said this. It's a man-made problem and it needs a man-made solution. But where's the money going to come from?
Well, we're going to get to that in addition to solutions. And we'll also, of course, bring in Dr. Maslow in a bit to talk a little bit more about the science behind it. Before we do that, I want to get to each of our panelists, and I want to come to Amanda, because this, of course, when we boil it down, is about how it affects the people, both who live here and work here and use New Jersey for recreation. Is the state doing enough to reduce harm? By the mayor's estimates, no.
Brianna, we're so grateful to be here. I'm the director of an organization founded by storm survivors. And so we're bringing the perspective today of how are our humans, how are our children, how are our families impacted by what is happening? And I would say across the board, the state of New Jersey is not doing enough to help the families that are living on the front lines of this more extreme and more frequent weather. And it's really incredibly critical. In the past with Superstorm Sandy, you see behind me a wall that Superstorm Sandy survivors made after the storm, cataloging what they lost in the storm. And being a storm survivor, whether it's Sandy or Ida or even the rain that we saw in December and January near the Passaic River, it's something you kind of become. It's something that always stays with you. And historically, we've been able to have maybe a federally declared disaster and help that's come from the federal government. There are many issues with the federal recovery system that we have to reform, but like we just saw in December, those folks are not going to be a federally declared disaster. And so we have almost nothing in place to support those families here in New Jersey that are being impacted by this rain and extreme weather we're seeing. And we're also making really serious mistakes when we do have a federally declared disaster. What's happened with Ida and Ida survivors, the state is not doing its part to reduce the harm that people are facing. And in fact, in many cases, it's increasing the harm by mandating buyouts for families that can't afford to mitigate on their own.
Yeah, you're referencing, of course, the storms that we saw in December and January when there was a deluge of rain and towns that didn't necessarily weren't used to experience flooding were dealing with it. Mark McDonough, I'd like to bring you in to talk a little bit about what municipalities can do, and we'll get deeper into this as the conversation goes on to alleviate some of these problems. As Amanda brought up, there's buyouts. Not everyone can do that. It doesn't necessarily get you into a home that you're living in currently. Mortgage rates are sky high. It's not a solution that necessarily meets the needs of every individual or every family. So we look to a lot to our local government. What can municipalities do here? And are their hands tied because of state regulations?
Thanks, Brianna. Thanks for having us here. As a water company, obviously, flooding has a unique sort of impact on our operations in water and wastewater. As with many things that we see these days, with challenges that are facing water purveyors and water operators, New Jersey having a number of small municipal water systems, there's a great challenge to municipalities. What fundamentally needs to happen with regard to flooding and water and wastewater is sort of twofold. One, the systems have to be made much more resilient. For instance, around our Raritan Millstone plant, which is the largest surface water operating plant in the state of New Jersey, produce about 140 million gallons a day. We have had to build a 48-foot flood wall, which is a substantial investment. The other piece of that is basic recapitalization. Floods put a tremendous pressure on the production facilities and ultimately the piping that delivers water safely to the customers in question. And what we saw in Tropical Storm Ida was that most of the water systems in the central part of the state were not able to handle the challenge that came from this and the flooding that came from that. Now, because we had built a resilient system in New Jersey American Water in the central part of the state, we did continue to operate, but many municipal and smaller water systems were knocked out of operation for days, weeks, and in some cases up to a month due to this flooding. So the challenge for municipalities is that there's now a layered set of challenges that they have from emerging contaminants, PFAS, PFOA, lead pipes, and ultimately the challenges that come from flooding. So while there are things that can be done, they require capital and investment and a commitment. And most municipalities simply aren't able to bring to bear the resources needed. So companies like New Jersey American Water are able to step in and invest the capital. We have over $500 million on average that we invest each year, and to build these larger, more resilient systems. So that's really one of the ways that municipalities can react to this challenge.
John Hurdle, you are a resident expert on this topic from the journalism side. We hit a number of different notes here just in our first go around. And so I want to come to you with what I think we're going to spend a pretty considerable amount of time talking about, which is development, which can be a whole range of items, everything from warehouse sprawl to, buildings and residential units, blacktop, pavement, parking lots, things of that nature. What have we seen the state put forward in terms of policies that are working to help alleviate some of this and address the issues that it's creating when it comes to flooding and stormwater runoff?
Well, first of all, I'd like to commend the mayor for highlighting the increased scope of development in New Jersey in recent years. And warehousing, for example, is a microcosm of that, a subset of that. Warehousing development, because warehousing is in such demand at the moment and is growing at such a pace, that obviously creates a tremendous amount of impervious surface. As the mayor was saying, it creates therefore more runoff, as more flooding as a result of that, and waterways are polluted. And in fact, some of the latest data that I've received just today, actually from Newmark, which is a commercial real estate company, states that currently there's 518 million square feet of warehousing currently in New Jersey, and that represents an increase of about 10% over the last 5 years. And what the data is also showing is that there's another 10 million square feet of warehousing in the pipeline. So this problem isn't going away, and unfortunately, it's continuing to contribute to the flooding problem and the state's struggles to deal with stormwater.
To the science of it, is it a combination of the human activity, the development that John Hurdle's referencing, and also changes in what we're seeing in the climate? And Dr. Maslow, if you can hear me, I know we were having a couple of technical difficulties. I think we got that working a little better, and hopefully you can all hear me clearly now. Dr. Maslow, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you now.
Okay.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, sure. So I just want to take you back to John Hurdle's referencing, and the mayor referenced, of course, the development, but is it a combination of the human activity that we're seeing and changes in the climate that are contributing to this? Can we definitively point to one or the other?
Yeah, I think that it is a combination. I mean, the mayor's right. The overdevelopment, the covering of pervious surfaces of natural landscapes with impervious surfaces doesn't allow places for the water to go. You know, he mentioned also the lack of dredging of channels, of floodways, right? So that water is being conveyed from upstream, downstream. And if it doesn't have a place to go and it's dumping in from all of these impervious surfaces as it goes, right, then it's just adding to that amplitude or that crest of the water as it's going. So, you know, it is a sort of a threefold problem. You've got the impervious surface, the overdevelopment. You've got the increases in frequency and intensity of rain events. Not only the amount of rain events, but the intensity of those events as they occur. And then you also have, you know, New Jersey is sinking through subsidence every year. And so we've got this, you know, sort of this contribution of sea level rise as well. And so it is a trifold problem that certainly is contributing to the flooding issues that we're seeing.
And so you and your team, Brooke, put together this 94-page primer for towns to use. It's like a toolkit. What does it include? Because it looks at flooding in a way that I think is a little bit of a different approach in terms of really embracing it as opposed to avoidance.
Yeah, so you know what I'd say, and so the primer is really stems from a lot of the work that we've been doing with communities, largely focused on property buyouts, Blue Acres program, things of that nature. And so what we were finding essentially was that, you know, as communities are trying to take these proactive approaches to increase resilience of their communities, to getting, you know, folks out of harm's way, protecting infrastructure and property and those sorts of things, you know, they're sort of left with buyout properties, demolished landscapes, open space that then needs to be managed in some way. And then there's a lack of guidance generally, of comprehensive guidance of then, okay, what do we do now once these properties are removed? And so the book that we created was essentially pulling together all of that information to kind of empower communities, to give them a sense of the options. So we talk about the issue of flooding in general, you know, where flooding comes from. And then we kind of take it through this resilience planning framework. So what are the options? How do you just determine whether you should use hard infrastructure versus nature-based solutions, those sorts of things. And then the book is largely focused on nature-based solutions. We don't say that hard infrastructure is not the way to go. We think an integrated approach is the way to deal with this pressing issue. But we focus more on the ecology, the function of landscapes, how they function naturally, and then how we can capitalize on that ecological function to mitigate flooding in communities and increase resilience. In terms of embracing the flooding, I think what we're trying to say is that, you know, this is a problem that isn't going away. It's a problem that needs to be addressed. And the way we define resilience, it's our ability to withstand the disturbance or the stressor, in this case, flooding, and then to be able to recover from that and then be stronger and better protected in the future.
John Hurdle, are there places that some of the tips outlined in Brooke and her team's work that they're working? And does it work everywhere? And I'm thinking particularly, Mayor, we'll come to you next to talk about some of the differences in Manville and what makes it unique in terms of applying some of this. Also, John, there are restrictions under Blue Acres and deed restrictions for towns once the properties are purchased. But are there places that tips like these are working that we can point to?
Well, Blue Acres has been around since about the mid 1990s, and it has purchased from willing sellers. We should stress, it's purchased around about 1,000 properties since then in various places around, not only along New Jersey's coastlines, both the Atlantic and the Delaware Bay coastlines, but also various various flood-prone locations along the rivers. And so I think the criteria that Blue Acres uses for buying these places is that these properties must have been subject to repeated flooding. They're very flood prone properties, and where the owners have basically that they are subject to a future of repeated flooding, and if the climate forecasts are right, then probably worse flooding. And so that's the point at which the state will step in and buy those properties, and then, as Brooke's been saying, turn that land into open space, perhaps parks, but places that can be used as barriers or buffers, if you like, for the for future floods, and to protect existing communities. So I think, yes, it has been a successful program, but what a lot of environmental advocates will tell you is that it's fine as far as it goes, but it doesn't actually match the scale of the problem, and it is dependent on both federal and state funding to work.
So I'm thinking about places, John, in Woodbridge Township that you profiled, and Brooke, that you helped guide, where some of these natural resources, rain guards, and other native species were planted to help those surfaces. But Mayor, if I can come to you, because the issues in Manville are so unique, do the buyouts help, and what does that leave you with? Because there's also an issue of equity and folks who are waiting for grants who were pulled out from the program.
Yes, the Blue Acres program has positives and negatives. And one of the biggest negatives I find with it is it removes tax revenues from our tax rolls here in the borough. However, I'm all in favor of helping people that are in harm's way. I grew up in a flood zone. My childhood house got knocked down in the Blue Acres program, and my parents almost got divorced over flooding. So it's very stressful to live in some of these areas. However, I think there needs to be a balance. NJ OEM came to my town and said, Rich, we're not going to fund elevations with federal dollars anywhere in your town. And I thought to myself, well, I've been here a lot longer than you, and I know the floodplains better than you, but they didn't listen. They walked away, and they pulled a very important funding program for some of my residents. There are areas in Manville where you can elevate and live safely. And there's other areas where I grew up. My childhood home got knocked down, and those homes can't be elevated. But there was no negotiation between me and the state. And it seems like Blue Acres has their own agenda. They really don't work well with the municipality, at least in my case. I feel I should have more say over the priority of buyouts. And I'll give you an example. The night of the storm, a house collapsed. The lady passed away the next day. It's an estate. That house still sits in an AE flood zone with a busted up foundation, and there is no buyout offer so that the family can close out the estate. So, I think we can do better. And I think it could be, I hate to say it's political, but we should work in a bipartisan manner here. We're all Americans first, and we need to help fellow Americans here, right here in Manville. My residents are still hurting over 2.5 years later. It's unacceptable.
Amanda, I'd like to bring you in on that, because you know this very well, considering the effects of some of the most devastating storms we've had. And we have folks who are still living in RVs in their driveways as they deal with this. And I'd like to bring you in on the Blue Acres issue as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. And so I just want to say, my family was impacted by Superstorm Sandy. I currently live on a small island in the middle of Barnegat Bay. and my family was allowed to rebuild on that island overlooking a bay. And I'm really deeply concerned about the policy that's being rolled out in Manville. I think it's targeting and discriminating against people who don't have the money to rebuild themselves. And I don't think this is the way New Jersey wants to address the increasing flooding and storms that we're seeing in a way that is not economically just or equitable. So I think I want to say two things about Blue Acres. One, there are problems with the Blue Acres program. It is very slow. I think there are people that would like a buyout that are not able to get a buyout because of some of the federal regulations that it operates under, because it is largely funded by federal disaster recovery grants and programs. And so you've got people that are saying, I would like a buyout, but they're not paying attention to me. And then you have other people that are like, I do not want a buyout. Why do they keep sending me certified letters? So there's no way that we get the Blue Acres program to be what I think environmental groups and activists think that it is in the state, which is actually a way to resolve risk for families that live on the front line of flooding. It's not that right now. It is a program that does some things, but it is not the end all be all. So unless we allocate more flexible state funding, unless we look at expanding that so that there are people that are jumping up and down that would like to get in and they can't get in right now, that program is not going to be successful. But part of the reason we're so mad at Blue Acres is because it's the only thing in some ways that's available right now, other than if you're going to get an elevation grant from a federally declared disaster, or if you got enough of a payout from your insurance company after a disaster, right? And so what New Jersey really needs to do is to create some better programs in the state, both to supplement a federally declared disaster and for people that are not meeting a federally declared disaster and have nothing. I want to go back to the flooding in December and January, which is not even a named storm. I can say a Sandy survivor, I can say an Ida survivor. And for those families, all I can say is the rain, the tremendous rain of December and January. And when we saw the images, we saw families' cars like just deep in water. If you're not a flood survivor, maybe you know this, maybe you don't. If you were making a car payment and your car insurance payout for that flooded total car is less than your car payment, and you didn't have supplemental insurance, you're still making a car payment for a car you can't drive. And likely you still need a car. So now you're making a new car payment. That is an incredible financial burden for your average working New Jerseyan, just for example. And so I think New Jersey should do something right now. We could implement right now a climate resilience tax credit. We could do it at the state level this legislative session to put, say, $1,500 in the pockets of these storm survivors who are literally otherwise getting nothing. There is potentially one program that they could get in if they had flood insurance that the state has indicated they're moving federal money towards. But really, I think that we could do tremendously better on this. Let's give $1,500 to every one of these families because they're not getting anything from FEMA. They're not getting in any other program because it wasn't a federally declared disaster. And we've been able to do this. You know, we give tax credits to developers who include resilience or climate credit plans, right? We talk a lot about infrastructure and we're talking about warehouses. We're talking about buildings. What are we doing for families? What are we doing for humans? Because the story that we're telling right now about what's happening in our state is fundamentally about home and family, and we don't have any in-state programs that are addressing it. So we really should begin this year rolling out something like this at the state level that would help families. Second thing is, sorry.
Sure. Go for it.
I just want to give an example, and I think the way to best give this example about what's happening in Manville with the mandatory buyouts is to tell a specific story of a specific family, so people can really understand why this is such a problem. And I think that we're really glad Mayor Orendurko and Manville residents and our organization are lifting up these Manville essentially mandatory buyouts for families that cannot afford to mitigate on their own, because this is not a precedent that we should allow in New Jersey. So, for example, there's a family, Eric, and he's got 2 children. They were 2 and 3 when Ida hit. He's more or less a single dad. His kids are with him 6 out of 7 days a week. Red Cross put Eric up in a hotel after Ida. FEMA finally gave Eric a check. His house, 4 feet of water, substantially damaged, totaled in Manville. And he got only $8,000 from FEMA. And this is months after the storm. And FEMA did not help him with rental assistance or a place to live. So he ended up buying an RV, living in an RV, right? And he applied for the elevation program that was happening that was being offered to Ida survivors. And Manville residents were told that they could apply for it at a meeting in Manville. So he's waiting to put his insurance money or any other money into rebuilding his house until after he elevates. So he's doing it all at once. He's using his money effectively. He can be safer. He can be higher. He can get back in. 2 years after the fact, after he gets accepted into the elevation program, he then receives a letter saying that he's not able to be in the elevation program. And the reason that we're getting for this is what the mayor said, which is that the Office of Emergency Management is saying it's too dangerous to go to Manville. It's too dangerous to rescue these residents. We're not putting federal grant money into elevating or rebuilding in Manville. Now you're removing a choice from families that can't finance the elevation themselves. I do not think that's the New Jersey that we stand for. But here's what we should also know. Homes in Manville are being sold right now, not to the Blue Acres program, but just to buyers on the market. So in the same area that the Office of Emergency Management says that we should be getting people out of, new people are coming in and buying. People with money in their pockets are elevating. So there are still residents there. People like Eric and other people are not able to take a buyout because they're not being offered a buyout that gives them enough money to pay off their mortgage and other debts and move. And so they're going to stay. They're going to stay at the same level that they were at when Ida hit. So I have no idea how that in sum total makes any sense to the Office of Emergency Management and would make rescuing anybody in that community any safer. The sane thing to do would be to offer mitigation to anybody that wanted it so that they could also elevate, right? They're actually, I think, increasing the danger with this decision, and it is not a good one.
Yeah, and Amanda, I mean, you highlight something that we've covered many times in talking to families, which is the, as you said, the choice is removed. It's either spend thousands of dollars out of pocket or deal with what you have. And so, Mark, I want to bring you back in to the conversation. I'm wondering about the role of water infrastructure here in addressing some of these flooding pressures.
Yeah, it does play a crucial role. I think one of the things we don't think about a lot is the integration of wastewater systems. Many of the older wastewater systems in New Jersey, and New Jersey is a densely populated state with an old industrial past, were cross-connected. That means that stormwater sewers are connected into sanitary sewers. So as that infrastructure ages and as storms become more intense, and the mayor and Dr. Maslow hit it right on the head, when you have these multiple factors of intensity of rain plus overdevelopment, you put a tremendous amount of pressure and you end up with flooding in these systems. So the answer to that question and what you do in response is to recapitalize those systems. That requires basic investment in the pipes that carry wastewater away, sanitary sewer water away, and diverting storm water to more capable systems that can deal with the excessive runoff that you have. Because when you have inflow and infiltration, what we call I&I, in these cross-connected systems, you're just exacerbating the problem. And the other thing is that wastewater treatment plants are, they operate on a system of biological treatment, essentially bugs. And if you push a lot of raw water, not sanitary sewer water, into these systems, you will overwhelm them. And what you end up doing is you bypass sewage directly into rivers if you're not properly operating them. So what operators oftentimes do is they sort of throttle down the operation in an effort to hold the plant, but that creates a reverse pressure back up into the system. And you'll hear operators talk about dancing manhole covers as you get the push of water from a storm versus the throttling of a treatment plant. You'll literally create these pressures, and older systems, oftentimes manholes are brick. They will deteriorate rapidly, which just further exacerbates the problem. So it's really incumbent that individuals or investor-owned utilities that have the capital to invest are able to step in and start rehabilitating these programs, because unfortunately, what we've seen is that over time, municipalities haven't been able to make those investments. And one good example is that we took over the wastewater collection system in Bound Brook, where we already provide the water, in 2022, and we've been able to study the flow of water through the manhole covers using acoustic systems to figure out how best to rehabilitate those pipes and how to relieve some of the flooding that is being exacerbated by overdevelopment and ultimately climate change.
Mark, is there any priority being given to overburdened communities to help pay for and address some of the older infrastructure?
Well, I mean, I'll give you an example. The state of New Jersey, coming out of the infrastructure money, the state of New Jersey has about $1 billion to spend on water and wastewater infrastructure over the course of the next 5 years. By example, or by juxtaposition, New Jersey American Water will invest probably closer to 1.5 billion. So we operate about 1/3 of all the systems in the state. So 2/3 of the systems will have that $1 billion divided between them. 1/3 of the systems will receive recapitalization of about 1.5 billion. So the fact of the matter is that there's simply just not enough resources. So while I believe the iBank and the DEP's efforts, and I applaud Commissioner LaTretta for his focus on this, are attempting to get that money where it needs to be. The reality is there's not enough money, and towns have a lot to deal with already. So navigating through the challenge of trying to get infrastructure money is very hard.
John Hurtle, there's been talk for years of stormwater utilities as one means to address this, to have the revenue, to have the resources. What's holding that idea back?
Well, it's a very good question, Brianna. Some people say that the public at large is at least reluctant to approve stormwater utilities because of this idea that they're a rain tax. So we should just step back for a second and point out that stormwater utilities are essentially financial mechanisms which were enabled by a law passed in New Jersey in 2019. And what they do is that they allow, but they do not require, they allow municipalities to charge landowners for the amount of impervious surface that they're on the basis of the amount of impervious surface that that their properties occupy, and then to take that revenue and use it to invest in green infrastructure, things like rain gardens, bioswales, pervious pavements, those sorts of things that will allow heavy rainfall or rainfall in general to soak into the ground naturally rather than becoming runoff. And then this idea, as you point out, has been around for a long time. But the unfortunate, and it actually has been adopted by hundreds of municipalities in around about 40 states, but none in New Jersey yet. And what I've heard recently from the DEP is that there are about 15 municipalities that are currently studying the feasibility of setting up one of these stormwater utilities, but none has actually yet taken the plunge to do it. And I did have a conversation probably about a year ago now with Mike Serra, who's the chief executive of the executive director of the League of Municipalities, and he said, well, I mean, he's very much in favor of these of stormwater utilities, but he said that even though the legislative battle to enable them had to allow these stormwater utilities had been won, the public relations battle had not, and that takes us back to the idea that this idea that it perhaps it's a so-called rain tax has gained some traction among the public.
Mayor Underker, I'm curious where you stand on an idea like a stormwater utility, and if what John Hurtle just said rings true, that the public relations part of this and getting property owners to be incentivized by it is one of the biggest challenges.
Well, I truly believe that Somerset County should be the first county in the state of New Jersey to have a stormwater utility. Now, trust me on this one. I'm a conservative Republican. I don't like higher taxes. I don't like it called a rain tax. But I do know one thing. If we're going to fix this problem because it's man-made, we need funding. Now, where's that funding going to come from? Maybe it can come from the biggest causers of the issue with the most impervious cover. Or maybe we got to think differently. What about using some of the lottery funds? Where does all that money go? So it just seems like, it just comes down to money and, buying into the problem that this is a quality of life issue now here in Somerset County that has gotten really, really big. Okay. When you shut down 206 with 2 feet of water, do you know what that does to my town? It becomes gridlock. We can't go anywhere. We're going under 2. So, I'm in favor of it, but let's do it reasonably and do it bipartisanly so that it's not made a political issue, because it's a quality of life issue. And I really believe it's only going to get worse before it gets better, unfortunately.
Yeah, Mayor, we're getting some questions from the audience, and it's one that I have as well, which is what the new inland flood protections, but also the flood disclosure rules do. Obviously, if you are already in an area that's affected in a home, whether you rent or own it, there's not a whole lot there for you. There's a lot of protection for people now who are looking to rent or buy. But can you give us an update on what type of protections that they offer and whether or not it goes far enough?
I think it does go far enough in terms of our FEMA maps right now for the borough of Manville are inaccurate. So I had a resident come to me who bought a house in October of 2023 after it was refurbished from Hurricane Ida in 21. And he basically said to me, Rich, no one told me that the house flooded. And that's unfortunate because, I think the new law is going to make it, much more easy to get the word out that, hey, know what you're buying. Here's the disclosure on this property. It has flooded multiple times, as opposed to now this person came to me and said, I want a buyout. And I'm like, well, do you know how many people are ahead of you in line for a buyout? So this flood disclosure rule, it should have happened probably 20 years ago. We're way behind the 8 ball here.
Mark McDonough, can I bring you in to get your thoughts on this? And importantly, the idea of a stormwater utility. Where does someone who sits from your vantage point see this?
Yeah, as a person who who serves 2.8 million people every day on a water utility, I can tell you I'm not particularly surprised that there's been slow going to get to the stormwater utility. There's tremendous complexity in operating a utility, and there's a tremendous complexity to understanding mapping and operating a stormwater utility. And as John pointed out, these funds really come out of fees collected from developers and things like that. So getting that steady income in to then look at the system, understand the system, understand how you want to rehabilitate it. I'm not surprised at all that towns find this very daunting. I mean, as I say, mayors have a lot on their plate. Life's getting only more complicated. So generating a new process like this could be very daunting. In Camden, they had a tremendous amount of flooding. We operate the city on 2/3 of the system of the wastewater system for the city on contract. And working with Camden Community Partners, a nonprofit that is the city, we were able to get grants and oversee the rehabilitation of a lot of the regulators that are in the system, because, of course, Camden has the Delaware River pushing in against their sewer system and make reductions. But, American Water brings to bear a tremendous engineering department, a tremendous amount of experience, and a tremendous understanding of pipe. And so it's just very challenging to think that a municipality is going to be able to acquire that level of expertise, that level of planning, and then execute on that level of construction that would be required to take the funds and then apply them to the stormwater system to make it effective, particularly if it's a cross-connected sanitary sewer system.
And so, Brooke Maslow, are there other simple tactics that municipalities can use to mitigate some of these risks based on your research, based on the primer, the toolkit?
Yeah, so I think it's an integrated approach. I think that nature-based solutions can go a long way, but there's certainly challenges and limitations to what we can do given the scale of the project, right? So some of the recommendations in terms of rain gardens and bioswales and things like that are on the smaller scale. So on the scale of a building or of a residential complex. And so when you think about the magnitude of flooding at the community scale, then you sort of think about, well, does that pale in comparison to the problem we're facing? But I think also that when you look at the bigger scale, and if you can overcome the challenges of piecing together a large enough footprint for some type of, a constructed stormwater wetlands, for example, larger scale, disconnecting or allowing, stormwater to discharge into these natural interventions before moving into, rivers and streams and things like that, then I think that those are places, I think those are goals and objectives that we want to get to as part of the solution.
Thanks, Brooke. Mark, I want to come back to you because I'm looking at the time and there's still a couple of more topics I want to get to. And one that we haven't touched on is storm flooding and the effects on water quality and the inequities that are there in some of the overburdened communities. We brought that up before. Just simply, though, what are the effects and what are we most up against when it comes to that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it is acute. The issues that come out of watershed protection. Earlier, the mayor and Dr. Maslow were talking about watershed and a lot of focus on that, and we think it's very important because as a water company, we are fundamentally sort of an environmentally based company because protecting the nature of water. New Jersey has plenty of water. The challenge that New Jersey has is oftentimes in spots has too much and it's too contaminated. That history of industrial nature and the compact nature of our citizenry makes for some real challenges to the watershed. And when you talk about surface plants, because to generate large amounts of water, generally you don't use wells. You need to use a surface-based plant. There's a lot of exposure to reliance on non-contamination or sort of a dependable watershed itself. So a lot of work has to be done to help protect that watershed. And to give you one example of how flooding impacts, so one of the basic challenges to taking surface water into a plant is around the concept of turbidity. It's essentially, for lack of a better way to put it, sort of dirt or particulate in the water. Now, when you have more intense rainstorms and more of them and more runoff because of overdevelopment, you're pushing more turbidity into the river or the source of the water, the lake or the reservoir that you might be drawing water from. So with that, it creates a new challenge for the operators who are there because there are methodologies in terms of filtering and chemical sequestration used. And we have had situations where our operators have seen record levels of turbidity coming into a plant because of this intensity of storms and rainfall and water that's entering the watershed. So it's an absolute challenge, and one that we've been successful in dealing with, but that's really only affected the ability for us to invest the capital we need to make sure we have.
John Hurdle, is the state incentivizing? Mark brought up, development and its role in water quality, but is the state incentivizing development and putting more strict regulations around development in areas that are in floodplains, but also prone to flooding, and these areas where we see some of these wastewater issues? Is the state targeting that at all?
Well, one thing the state did do last year was come out with a set of guidelines for the warehouse industry. Now, warehouses, of course, are a major source of runoff. What the state recommended was it was a set of guidelines for municipalities to do things like review their zoning regulations and to do a cost benefit analysis on warehouse plans if they were presented as such. But the state did come in for a certain amount of criticism for that report, in that it was not a requirement. It was only a set of guidelines, and the stated reason for that was because of New Jersey's long tradition of home rule, and the state officials in the State Planning Commission went to some lengths to point out that they didn't have the power to be telling municipalities what to do, and it was really up to them to decide whether they were going to enact zoning regulations that would get to grips with this particular source of stormwater runoff.
Mayor, can I bring you back in on that? Because you also had those graphics that, if we can, I would like to pull up one more time to give
Sure.
people a better look at the development. Is there an issue with, as John Hurdle said, there's always, right, this tug of war between overregulation and zoning ordinances, but also looking at the greater good. And I'd love your take on that. And also, what we're looking at here is some of the, you can take a look right there, what exactly happens from 1 inch of rain, what that translates to.
It's a big impact when you knock down a forested lot of, say, 9 or 10 acres of land and you put a warehouse there. You could see the difference in the gallons there as to what comes off the property. But more importantly, I like to stress that they are finally paying attention, because when I go to other meetings, I say, are you guys paying attention? And it seems like the state's starting to pay attention to this problem. And they can hide behind climate change all they want, but it's this impervious cover that they're putting into all these different watersheds. Under the new MS4 guidelines, every municipality needs a watershed improvement plan. And I'm excited about what could be happening over here in Hillsborough along the Royce Brook. Dr. Abrupta from Rutgers is developing plans to go back and retrofit communities that have no stormwater management that were put in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s before stormwater management rules were even in effect. So it all comes down to money, though. Where's the money going to come from to fund projects like that? Because Dr. Abrupta, he truly believes he can make a big impact into the water levels in the Royce Brook, which come to my town and flood my main street. So I'm hopeful that, the spotlight's going to be on a different set of issues. We can't control the weather. With Hurricane Ida, my town had 11.25 inches of rain in 6 hours. You can't prepare for that. But we can be more aware of how much impervious cover we're putting into the watershed. And in addition, I want to say one more thing about my town. When people take a Blue Acres buyout here, they want to move to high ground and stay in my town. They love living in Manville. So why can't they live here safely in an elevated home where it makes sense? They don't want to leave.
Well, and Amanda, you made the point earlier about being able to rebuild, say, on a barrier island or in Long Beach Island versus someone who's inland, let's say Keansburg or Manville, who's needing a grant to do so, putting them in a different situation. What are the other inequities that you see in working with families who are in this position?
That is a great question. Yeah. And, like as Bob Dylan sort of famously said, you don't need a weatherman to see which way the wind blows, right? Whether you think climate change is increasing this rain and flooding, or you think overdevelopment is increasing this rain or flooding, or both, or one or the other, we can all agree on the solutions, and that they really need to be equitable. So I've talked some about homes and home programs. I have not done justice to renters. And, there are renters that are still displaced from Hurricane Ida and don't know when they're going to go home. Fundamentally, if we are looking at this question of flooding from a home and family question, and we love our homes, it's not that I don't know that flooding is happening. My daughter, since 2024, since this year started, has had 2 delayed openings because of flooding and 1 day of school cancellation because of flooding. And that was just from rain that was coming into our bay. So it's impacting my life, but I want to stay there because I love it there. I love my neighbors. And I live in a home that's been in my family since 1929, and it is like a family member. So these questions we're considering, they're about our emotional, physical well-being and our relationship to our communities, and they're really important. And so I think that fundamentally, this is really a question of affordable housing, though, in New Jersey, right? Where can people afford to live, both renters and homeowners? We have a lot of affordable housing that's built on floodplains here, or places that you can afford to live because they flood. And that's not okay. So we fundamentally, one, we've got to offer people a choice, right? And we're still in a position where we can elevate and mitigate, and we need to be able to do that as long as we can. But two, we've got to make sure there are affordable places to go in this state. Some of what's driving what's happening is because there are not. And so there's affordable housing legislation pending in the state right now that, allies of ours from, say, Fair Share Housing, for example, are trying to move. If we can't build more places that people can afford to go, they're going to have to stay. And to the question of flood disclosure or these inland flooding rules, if we can't provide people with funding to mitigate or make their places safer, my worst fear is that people are going to get trapped someplace that they can't sell and they don't have the money or funds to mitigate. So we're keeping people in an unsafe situation if we don't develop more avenues for them to get safer.
Well, and in fact, anecdotally, we know we've spoken with families who have been in that position, certainly right after Hurricane Sandy, the first several years following. Amanda, is there one item, if you just there, I know there are many, you've brought up a couple, that you feel attention needs to be focused on immediately, urgently? What would it be?
And immediately, urgently, the state has to take seriously allocating state funding to address this crisis. We cannot continue to rely on federal programs, declarations, and funding. That is getting more and more unreliable at the federal level. So this state session, we need to see funding moved for clawback relief for Sandy families, many of whom are still struggling to get home and dealing with the recovery system. We need funding moved now for families from Ida who still need help. What is happening with renters? Where are they going? For the people in Manville that want to elevate, I think we should do this resilience tax rebate immediately for these rainstorm families that are going to get nothing else because there's no program out there that we have in the state. And we have to keep listening to storm survivors, right? This is a movement that's got to be led because we've got the experience and we know what the solutions are.
Dr. Brooke Maslow, are there items that you think often get overlooked? This is such a pervasive issue in New Jersey, but it's also a daunting issue, especially for a lot of local leaders. They are asked to do a lot more with less. Is there a way to harness what you have done with your research and narrow the scope and sort of look at this bit by bit to help break down how solutions can be achieved or policies?
That's a tough question, Brianna. I think that we've brought up several different issues, whether it's affordable housing or, climate change, impervious cover, these different things. And I think the tendency for us is to look at it as components rather than that cohesive whole. And I think that, bringing all of these things together and thinking about, as an example, I think the mayor brought up the loss of tax revenues coming in with the loss of buyouts, the transition of those properties to state state-owned land. So, for example, looking at the socioeconomic impacts of not only the flooding on the town itself and the infrastructure and the critical assets, but then also, the amount of money that is saved by reductions in those management areas, is that offset, or does that offset the loss of tax revenues, right? I think so. I think it's actually more of a larger scale look at how all of these things fit together. When we think about buyouts or we think about relocating people, are there relocation incentives or relocation funding that we can provide individuals so that they don't wind up going from one flood-prone home to another because either there was no disclosure or because they can't afford something else? Are there ways to create affordable housing within a town so that you can relocate people to stay within the town that they've stayed in. I think or that they've come from. So I think everything that we're talking about here is just it's a series of tough choices and tough situations that we're all dealing with and trying to figure out solutions and addressing problems. And I think we need to look at it actually as a larger picture and find those connections and how we can put them together.
Before we move to what I'll call our lightning round, we have a question from one of the audience members. And Mayor, I'll pose this to you after Amanda mentioned the need for more affordable housing. The question is, how do you balance that need with the understanding or the view that New Jersey is already overbuilt?
Well, in particular to my town, we're 2 square miles. We were built around a manufacturing facility from the 1920s, Johns Manville. Most of those people that lived in Manville went off to fight the wars for us and protected our freedom. Today, we're built out, but we do have a piece of land that's in the center of our town, 12 acres, that we would like to create some housing on. And there's a program under HUD that's new. It's called Smart Moves, and it's going to be federally funded by the government to create this housing opportunity. However, this is a competitive grant. So, I have to compete along with other towns to try to get that Smart Moves program for Manville. I hope I'm successful, but my point is, we had a presidential visit here. President Biden came and walked the streets with me. 2.5 years later, not one official has been back to see how we're doing, and we're still hurting, and we still haven't received any of the $400 or so million that are on the table as part of the IDA relief. Mm-hmm. So I'm a little frustrated. I feel for my residents, and I'm fighting for them. I think we deserve better here.
Mayor, I'll stay with you then to give us your final takeaway as we round out this discussion. A takeaway, call to action, what you want to leave folks with.
That's a tough one. Obviously, we want to help as many people get out of harm's way and also to remove homes that they're no longer living in. I have residents who are paying property taxes and sewer bills on homes they walked away from 2 years ago, and they're still waiting for a buyout. That is totally unacceptable. Governor Murphy, please come visit me. I'll show you my town and what I would like to see done. There needs to be some sense of urgency, because I've been told by one of the top officials in the state that, Rich, disaster recovery takes a long time. Well, you know what? I think we could do better. And, I want to help people remain in Manville. So we do need that low income housing to help the people that are in need from losing their homes. And, we're a great community here. We're very patriotic. And like I said, when people take a buyout, they make sure that they can find a home in town. And others who have left have always told me, I want to come back to Manville. So the housing opportunity under Smart Moves, I pray that, our application is successful. I think the deadline is in April or May. And again, it just takes so long. We're almost 3 years, 2.5 years out from IDA, and we still wait.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to say that disaster recovery takes a long time when you're not the one living through it. John Hurtle, I'm going to bounce it over to you to give us your final thoughts.
Who are concerned about this to keep on fighting, and really what the example that comes to my mind is a campaign in West Windsor and Mercer County, and those folks have been fighting against a plan to build what would be New Jersey's largest warehouse complex, 5.5 million square feet, and one of the objections that is raised to this project is that it would actually violate the state's new inland flood protection rule, which requires new construction to be built 2 feet higher than it previously was. And so I think it's worth kind of highlighting the efforts that these folks have made. Because they continue to fight, they continue to make their argument against at the DEP, at the county level, and in fact, one of the advocates is also fighting that piece in the courts. I think that this will be this is an example of public opposition that so far seems to have worked.
Thanks, John, and thanks for circling back on the inland protection rules. Mark, can I come to you next? Would love your takeaways.
Yeah. First off, I want to commend you guys in New Jersey Spotlight for having this conversation, because that's really my takeaway. We need to have more conversations like this. And the mayor and Amanda really highlight the human impact, right? As a water utility, we oftentimes operate pretty anonymously. People open their tap there, they flush the toilet, it goes away. And that's great. But there are urgent issues that need to be addressed. And water's all we do. So we stand ready to talk to anybody about how we can come together. But it's absolutely imperative that we have these conversations and that we're willing to have an open and honest conversation, because stormwater, lead pipe, forever chemicals, the list is very long of the challenges that we face to continue to have a great.
Yeah, right. As long as my water turns on, my shower turns on, we're good with our water utility, but we don't all think about all that goes behind it. And as you said, investment. Dr. Brooke Maslow, can I come to you for a final thought?
Sure. I think actually I'll piggyback off of what Mark said. But these conversations, I think, bring to light these different goals, whether they're social, cultural, economic, environmental. And I think that these types of conversations hopefully can lead to partnerships where we can find, common agendas, and we can push through, whether it's legislation or design or planning, but ultimately implementation of integrated approaches that are going to significantly address this problem, both from an environmental standpoint, but also from the social standpoint. I mean, because as the mayor said, it is a people problem. It affects people, and that's really our main goal, is to get people out of harm's way, to protect that infrastructure, and to maintain the landscape as an asset for our communities.
Yeah, bottom line, Amanda, it's a quality of life issue for sure. Bring us home, if you can, with a takeaway for our audience.
Sure. So this is something we're facing as New Jerseyans now. The flooding could impact any of us anywhere. And I think that Ida and recent storms have shown that. And so I just want to say, look, this is New Jersey, right? We say that we do better here. We have, a higher minimum wage. We have our own healthcare marketplace. We have really great family leave. Why don't we also have a really great system in place to support New Jerseyans dealing with flooding? We've got to take a look at doing that now before it becomes too late, and we end up with what's happening right now, which is storm survivors that are more broke, more sick, and more emotionally troubled, frankly, than they were before the storm. It is not okay. We deserve better, and it is within our power to do that.
I want to thank each of our panelists. I want to thank our audience, our sponsor, New Jersey American Water, all for participating in what I think we would agree is a really meaningful, important conversation. This, of course, is just the first in our 4-part series looking at the topic of climate change, the science, the politics, the policies. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.
And thank you, Brianna, very much for leading a very interesting and spirited discussion. I learned a lot. And same with our chat, lots of conversation going on there. Links are galore. I know that we're going to be distributing the maps and the charts that the mayor shared with us. So folks, look for anyone who registered. We'll be getting an email with more information about this and a link to the entire discussion, which please do share with your friends and colleagues. As Brianna mentioned, this is the first of 4. The next one will be on land and marine heat. We'll be holding that in the next few weeks. So again, look for those promotions as well. We will also be doing a roundtable on rising sea levels. And then we'll do an all-encompassing one that looks at a bunch of the policies and regulations that have and have not been enacted. So stay tuned. This is just the beginning of what we hope will be a really important and meaningful discussion. So thank you all for joining us today. Thanks again to the panel and to Brianna, and we'll see you next time.